A Werewolf Shifter Romance, written by Amelia Hart. Chapter 1. The Orphan in the Storm. The fluorescent lights of Murphy's diner flickered against the howling wind, casting eerie shadows across the empty booths. Elena Carter wiped down the same counter for the third time in 10 minutes, her hands trembling slightly as she glanced toward the frost-covered windows. The blizzard had been raging for hours now, turning the small mountain town into a frozen wasteland. At 24, Elena had learned to find comfort in routine. Work the night shift, avoid getting too close to anyone, and never ask questions about the strange dreams that plagued her sleep. Dreams of running through forests on 4 legs, of a bond so deep it made her chest ache with longing for something she couldn't name. The wind rattled the diner's old windows, and Elena pulled her worn cardigan tighter around her shoulders. She should have been used to being alone by now. After all, she'd been alone since she was 8 years old, when a car accident claimed both her parents on a night much like this one. The official report said they'd hit black ice on the mountain pass, but Elena had always felt there was something more to their deaths. Something the authorities didn't want a grieving child to know. Her childhood had been a series of foster homes, each placement lasting shorter than the last. Some families were kind, but overwhelmed. Others saw her as nothing more than a monthly check. The worst ones made her feel like something was fundamentally wrong with her, though she could never quite understand what. She'd learned early to keep quiet about the strange dreams, and the way stray animals always seemed to find her. By 18, she'd aged out of the system with little more than a worn suitcase, and the hard-earned knowledge that the only person she could truly depend on was herself. The diner had become her sanctuary. Murphy, the gruff owner, had hired her 3 years ago, without asking too many questions about her past. He paid her in cash and let her work the graveyard shift when the world was quiet and she could pretend she belonged somewhere. The regulars were mostly truckers and shift workers who kept to themselves, ordering coffee and pie without trying to make conversation. It was perfect for someone who'd learned that getting close to people only led to disappointment and abandonment. But tonight felt different. Tonight, the storm seemed to carry whispers of change on its frozen breath. The weatherman had called it a historic blizzard, the kind that shut down highways and left entire towns isolated for days. Elena had volunteered to work alone, telling Murphy she could handle things until the weather cleared. She needed the money, and besides, where else did she have to go? Her trailer at the Pineview Mobile Home Park was a 20-minute walk on a good day. In this weather, it might as well have been on another planet. The ancient heating system barely worked, and she'd probably be warmer in the diner anyway. Elena glanced at the clock above the grill. 2:30 in the morning, and the last customer had left hours ago. Old Pete, a trucker who stopped by once a week, had warned her about the storm before heading out. "This one's gonna be bad, sweetheart," he'd said, counting out exact change for his coffee and apple pie. "You make sure you stay somewhere safe tonight." The power had been flickering on and off all evening, and she could hear the old generator struggling against the wind. She should probably call Murphy and ask if she could close early, but the thought of walking back to her tiny trailer in this weather made her stomach clench with anxiety. Besides, someone might need shelter. It had happened before, travelers stranded by sudden weather, finding refuge in the warm glow of the diner's neon sign. The lights flickered again, then went out completely. Elena fumbled for her phone's flashlight, her heart racing in the sudden darkness. The familiar hum of the refrigerators and coffee makers fell silent, leaving only the sound of wind howling around the building like something alive and hungry. The generator coughed once, twice, then fell silent with a mechanical wheeze that sounded almost like a death rattle. Through the howling wind, she could hear something else, something that made the hair on the back of her neck stand up, and every nerve in her body sing with an alarm she didn't understand. Scratching. Desperate, urgent scratching at the front door. Elena moved toward the sound, her sneakers squeaking against the linoleum floor. The beam of her phone's light danced across the walls as she approached the entrance, illuminating faded photographs of the town in better days. Through the frosted glass, she could make out 3 large shapes huddled against the door. At first, she thought they might be people seeking shelter from the storm, but as she got closer, her breath caught in her throat. They were wolves. Massive. with thick coats matted with snow and ice that gleamed like diamonds in the pale light filtering through the storm clouds. But there was something wrong with them. They were too big, too intelligent-looking, and the way they were scratching at the door, the soft whimpers she could hear even through the glass, it was almost human in its desperation. Elena pressed her face against the cold window, her breath fogging the glass. The largest wolf, with dark fur and striking pale eyes that seemed to glow in the darkness, looked directly at her. For a moment, time seemed to stop. There was something in those eyes, something that called to a part of her soul she'd kept buried for years. Recognition. Need. A desperate kind of hope that made her chest tight with emotions she couldn't name. The wolf's lips pulled back, not in a snarl, but in what looked almost like a smile. Then it lifted one massive paw and tapped against the glass, just once. The sound was soft but deliberate, unmistakably a request rather than a demand. Elena stumbled backward, her heart hammering against her ribs. This wasn't possible. Wolves didn't behave like this. They didn't seek out human contact, didn't tap on doors like they were asking for permission to enter. They certainly didn't look at humans with the kind of intelligence and emotion she saw in those pale eyes. But as she watched, all three animals pressed closer to the glass, their eyes fixed on her with an intensity that made her feel exposed, vulnerable, and strangely safe all at once. Ice was forming on their fur, and she could see they were shivering despite their thick coats. Their breathing created small clouds of vapor that fogged the glass, and she could hear the soft sounds of distress they were making. They were dying out there. Elena's hand moved to the door handle before her rational mind could stop her. Every instinct screamed at her to stay inside, to wait for the storm to pass, to call animal control in the morning. But there was something else, something deeper than instinct, that recognized these creatures, something that whispered they were meant to be here, that this moment had been written in the stars, long before she was born. Her fingers closed around the cold metal of the deadbolt. One twist, and everything would change. She could feel it in the air, electric and dangerous and utterly inevitable, like standing at the edge of a cliff, knowing that once you jumped, there was no going back. "What am I doing?" she whispered to herself, but her hand was already turning the lock. The moment the bolt clicked open, the wind caught the door and threw it wide. Snow swirled into the diner, along with three enormous wolves who moved with a grace that defied their size. Elena scrambled backward, her phone clattering to the floor as the animals padded into the warmth of the diner, leaving wet paw prints on the checkered linoleum. The largest wolf, the one with the pale eyes, looked at her for a long moment. Then, as Elena watched in stunned silence, the air around him began to shimmer like heat waves rising from summer pavement, and everything she thought she knew about the world shattered like ice. Chapter 2. 3 Strangers in the Night. The shimmer in the air intensified, and Elena watched in frozen terror as the wolves began to change. Bones cracked and reformed with sounds that made her stomach lurch. Fur receded into smooth skin, and within moments, 3 naked men stood where the wolves had been just seconds before. Elena's phone slipped from her numb fingers, clattering across the floor as her knees gave out. She pressed her back against the counter, her breath coming in short, panicked gasps. This wasn't real. This couldn't be real. People didn't just transform from animals. That was the stuff of movies and nightmares, not small-town diners in the middle of nowhere. The largest man stepped forward, and Elena got her first clear look at him. He was tall and broad-shouldered, with dark hair that was still damp from melted snow. His pale eyes, the same ones that had looked at her through the glass, held an intensity that made her feel like he could see straight through to her soul. There were fresh cuts across his chest and arms, blood trickling from wounds that looked like claw marks. "Please," he said, his voice deep and commanding even as he held his hands up in a gesture of peace. "We're not going to hurt you." Elena tried to speak, but only a strangled sound came out. She pressed herself harder against the counter, wishing she could disappear into the worn formica. Her rational mind was screaming that this had to be some kind of hallucination brought on by stress and isolation, but the men standing in front of her were undeniably real. She could smell the cold mountain air clinging to their skin, could see the steam rising from their bodies as they warmed up in the heated diner. "Stay back," She finally managed to gasp, her voice high and shaky. "I'm calling the police." She fumbled for her phone, but her hands were shaking so badly she couldn't pick it up. The second man, slightly shorter but just as imposing, with brown hair and green eyes, took a step closer. "Sweetheart, please calm down. We're not your enemies." "Don't call me that!" Elena snapped. "Don't call me that!" Elena snapped, some of her fear transforming into anger. "And don't come any closer. I don't know what kind of sick game this is, but I want you out of here right now." The third man, the youngest looking with sandy hair and blue eyes, growled low in his throat. The sound was distinctly inhuman, and Elena could swear she saw his eyes flash gold for just a moment. "She's in shock, Marcus. Let me handle this." "No, Damien." The dark-haired man, Marcus apparently, held up a hand. His voice carried an authority that made both his companions immediately step back. When he spoke again, his words seemed to vibrate through Elena's bones with a power she didn't understand. "Stop. Look at me." Elena found herself unable to look away, though every instinct told her to run. There was something in his voice, something that commanded obedience on a level deeper than conscious thought. Her breathing slowed slightly, though her heart was still racing. "That's better," Marcus said, his tone gentler now but still carrying that strange authority. "My name is Marcus Blackwood. These are my brothers, Adrian and Damien. We're not going to hurt you." "Brothers?" Elena's voice cracked. You were..." She gestured helplessly at the spot where the wolves had been. "Wolves, yes," Adrian, the brown-haired man, said carefully. "I know this is a lot to process, but we need you to listen to us." Elena shook her head violently. "This isn't real. People don't just change into animals. I'm having some kind of breakdown. Too much stress, too many double shifts." She was babbling now, but she couldn't seem to stop. "I should call my doctor. Or a psychiatrist. Or maybe I hit my head when the power went out and I'm unconscious on the floor right now." Damien made a sound of frustration and stepped forward, his muscles tensing like he was about to shift again. "This is taking too long. She's not listening." "Enough!" Marcus's voice cracked like a whip, and the very air in the diner seemed to thicken with power. Elena felt it wash over her like a physical force, making her skin tingle and her breath catch. For a moment she could swear she felt something wild and untamed stirring in her own chest, responding to his call. Both Adrian and Damien immediately froze, their heads bowing slightly in what looked like submission. The display of dominance was so primal, so absolute, that Elena found herself staring in fascination despite her fear. Marcus turned back to her, and his expression had softened again. "I'm sorry. I didn't mean to frighten you more than we already have, but we need you to understand that we're not a threat to you." "What are you people?" Elena whispered, her voice barely audible above the wind still howling outside. "We're werewolves," Adrian said gently. "Shapeshifters. We can take the form of wolves, but we're also human. We're not monsters from some horror movie. We have families, responsibilities, feelings just like anyone else." Elena stared at him, then at Marcus and Damien. They were all watching her with an intensity that made her feel like the most important person in the world. Despite her terror, there was something about their presence that felt right, like a piece of a puzzle she'd been trying to solve her entire life had finally clicked into place. "This is insane," she muttered, but even as she said it, she could feel her resistance crumbling. Deep down, in a part of herself she'd always tried to ignore, their words rang true. How many times had she felt like she didn't quite belong in the human world? How many times had she dreamed of running wild and free under the moonlight? "I know it sounds crazy," Damien said, his voice surprisingly gentle for someone who looked like he could tear apart a car with his bare hands. "But you let us in for a reason. Some part of you recognized us, didn't it?" Elena wanted to deny it, but she couldn't. There had been something about the wolves at the door, something that had called to her on a level deeper than logic or fear. Even now, standing in front of 3 naked strangers who claimed to be mythical creatures, she felt an inexplicable pull toward them. "Why were you out there?" she asked finally. "In the storm, I mean. If you're what you say you are, shouldn't you be better equipped to handle the cold?" Marcus exchanged a look with his brothers before answering. We were traveling, searching for something important. The storm caught us off guard, and we took shelter in our wolf forms, but even we have our limits. We would have frozen to death if you hadn't let us in." "Searching for what?" Elena asked, though she wasn't sure she wanted to know the answer. "Someone," Adrian said quietly. "Someone very important to us." There was something in his tone, a longing that made Elena's chest tighten with sympathy despite her confusion and fear. She found herself taking a step closer to them, drawn by an invisible force she couldn't name or resist. "I still don't understand any of this," she said, wrapping her arms around herself. "This morning I was just a normal person working a normal job. Now I'm talking to 3 men who think they're werewolves." "We don't think we're werewolves," Damien said with a slight smile. "We are werewolves." "Prove it," Elena said, surprising herself with her boldness. The 3 men exchanged another look, and Marcus nodded slowly. "If that's what it takes for you to believe us." The air began to shimmer again, and Elena watched in amazement as Marcus began to shift. This time, she forced herself to really look, to take in every impossible detail. His bones elongated and reformed, his skin sprouting thick, dark fur. Within moments, the massive wolf from outside stood before her again, those pale eyes holding the same intelligence and warmth she'd seen in his human form. Elena reached out without thinking, her hand stopping just inches from his snout. "You're really him. You're really real." The wolf made a soft sound, almost like a purr, and gently touched his nose to her outstretched palm. The contact sent an electric shock through her entire body, and for a moment, she could swear she felt his emotions as clearly as her own. Concern, protectiveness, and underneath it all, a bone-deep recognition that terrified and thrilled her in equal measure. Marcus shifted back to human form, and Elena found herself staring into his eyes again. "Do you believe us now?" Elena nodded slowly, still trying to process everything she'd seen. "I believe you. I don't understand it, but I believe you. That's all we can ask for right now," Adrian said softly. Outside, the storm continued to rage, and Elena realized that whatever had started when she opened that door, there was no going back now. These 3 men had brought more than just the cold into her quiet, ordered life. They'd brought magic, danger, and the promise of answers to questions she'd been afraid to ask. She just had to find the courage to accept whatever came next. Chapter 3. Trapped by the storm. The wind outside grew more vicious, rattling the diner's windows with a fury that seemed almost supernatural. Elena glanced toward the frost-covered glass, watching the snow pile higher against the building. What had started as a heavy snowfall had transformed into a full-blown blizzard that showed no signs of stopping. "Looks like we're stuck here for a while," Adrian observed, following her gaze. He'd wrapped a dish towel around his waist for modesty, though it did little to hide his impressive physique. "This storm is only getting worse." Elena nodded absently, still trying to process the impossible situation she found herself in. 3 werewolves in her diner, all of them injured and clearly exhausted. Despite everything her rational mind told her, she couldn't bring herself to turn them away, not when they looked at her with such desperate hope in their eyes. "You're hurt," she said suddenly, noticing the claw marks across Marcus's chest more clearly now. "All of you are bleeding," Damien shrugged, though she could see him favoring his left side. "Occupational hazard. We heal fast." "Not in this cold, you don't," Elena said, surprising herself with her authoritative tone. "Sit down. Let me get the first aid kit." She moved toward the back office, muscle memory guiding her through the familiar space, even in the dim light of her phone's flashlight. Murphy kept a well-stocked medical kit for kitchen accidents, and Elena had learned basic first aid during her time in foster care. Too many homes where asking for help meant drawing unwanted attention. When she returned, the 3 men had settled into the large corner booth, their imposing frames making the furniture look almost toy-like. Marcus watched her approach with those intense pale eyes, and Elena felt that strange flutter in her chest again. "You don't have to do this," he said quietly. "We're strangers. Dangerous strangers at that." "Maybe," Elena replied, setting the kit on the table. "But you're also bleeding in my diner, and I can't just ignore that." She looked up at him, meeting his gaze directly. "Besides, you said you were searching for someone." Maybe I can help." The three brothers exchanged a loaded look, and Elena caught the tail end of what seemed like a silent conversation. There were undercurrents here she didn't understand, secrets that went deeper than just their supernatural nature. "It's complicated," Adrian said finally. Elena opened the first aid kit and pulled out antiseptic wipes. "I've got time. And apparently we're not going anywhere until this storm passes." She started with Marcus, cleaning the wounds on his chest with careful, gentle touches. His skin was warm under her fingertips, almost fevering, and she could feel the tension in his muscles as she worked. Every time she touched him, that strange electric sensation shot through her, making her hyper-aware of every breath, every heartbeat. "We're part of a pack," Marcus began, his voice carefully controlled, despite the obvious discomfort of having his wounds cleaned. "The Blackwood Pack. Our father was the alpha before us. Before you?" Elena paused in her ministrations. "You're all alphas?" "Triplet alphas," Damien confirmed, wincing as she moved to clean a particularly deep scratch on his arm. "It's rare, but not unheard of. We're meant to share leadership of the pack. And we're meant to share a mate," Adrian added quietly. Elena's hands stilled. "A mate?" "Werewolves mate for life," Marcus explained, his eyes never leaving her face. "When we find our other half, we bond completely. Mind, body, and soul. For triplet alphas, that mate is shared between all three of us." Elena felt her cheeks burn. That sounds complicated." "It is," Adrian agreed, "especially when you can't find her." There was such longing in his voice that Elena's heart clenched in sympathy. She resumed cleaning his wounds, trying to ignore the way her pulse quickened every time their skin made contact. "How long have you been searching?" she asked. "Years," Damien said, his usual cocky demeanor replaced by something much more vulnerable. "We're running out of time." "Time?" Marcus leaned back against the booth, studying her face in the dim light. "There are laws in our world, ancient laws that govern pack hierarchy and succession. If we don't find our mate by our 30th birthday, we forfeit our right to lead the pack." "When's your birthday?" Elena asked, though she had a sinking feeling she already knew the answer. 3 days, all three said in unison. Elena's hand stilled again. 3 days? And you still haven't found her? "We thought we had," Adrian said softly. "There have been signs, dreams, visions of a woman with dark hair and eyes like starlight. Someone who calls to the wolf in us." Elena touched her own dark hair self-consciously. "What happens if you don't find her in time?" "The council dissolves our pack," Marcus said, his jaw clenching. "Our territory gets divided among other alphas. Our people get scattered. Everything our father died to protect gets destroyed." The pain in his voice was so raw that Elena found herself reaching out to touch his hand before she could stop herself. The moment their skin made contact, a jolt of electricity shot through both of them. Marcus's eyes widened, and Elena gasped, pulling her hand back as if she'd been burned. "Sorry," she mumbled, her cheeks burning. You looked so sad." "Don't apologize," Damien said, leaning forward with sudden intensity. "Do you feel that? When you touch us?" Elena nodded hesitantly. "It's like static electricity, but warmer, more intense." The three brothers exchanged another one of those loaded looks, and Elena felt like she was missing something crucial. "Elena," Marcus said carefully, "have you ever felt like you don't quite belong? Like there's a part of you that's missing?" The question hit her like a physical blow. She'd felt exactly that way her entire life, like she was searching for something she couldn't name. "How did you know?" "Because we feel it too," Adrian said gently. "That emptiness. That sense of searching for something just out of reach." Elena shook her head, backing away from the table. "No. You can't be suggesting what I think you're suggesting." "Why not?" Damien asked, standing up and moving toward her with predatory grace. "You let us in when every instinct should have told you to run. You're taking care of us like we're precious to you. And every time we touch, it feels like coming home." "I'm human," Elena protested, though even as she said it, doubts crept in. All those strange dreams, her unusual connection with animals, the way she'd always felt different from everyone around her. "Are you?" Marcus asked softly. Have you ever shifted? Had dreams of running on 4 legs? Felt the pull of the full moon? Elena's breath caught. How could you possibly know about that? Because you're ours, Adrian said, his voice full of wonder. You're our mate. I can feel it in every fiber of my being. Elena shook her head frantically. This is crazy. I can't be a werewolf. I would know, wouldn't I? Not necessarily, Marcus said, standing as well. Some wolves are late bloomers. Others have their abilities suppressed by trauma or isolation. You've been alone most of your life, haven't you? No family? No pack to teach you what you are? Elena wrapped her arms around herself, feeling suddenly exposed. My parents died when I was 8. I've been on my own ever since. What were their names? Damien asked gently. Sarah and Michael Carter. Why? The 3 brothers went very still, and Elena felt a chill that had nothing to do with the storm outside. Carter, Adrian whispered. Elena, do you know anything about your family history? Where your parents came from? No, Elena said, confused by their sudden intensity. They never talked about their families. I always assumed it was because they were both orphans, too. Marcus moved closer, his eyes burning with sudden urgency. Elena, the Carter bloodline. They were known for producing powerful wolves, healers and leaders. If you're who I think you are... Stop, Elena said, backing toward the kitchen. Just stop. This is too much. I can't be some mythical werewolf mate. I'm nobody. I work in a diner and live in a trailer park. I'm not special. You are to us, Damien said fiercely. You're everything to us. Before Elena could respond, a loud crack echoed through the diner as something heavy struck the roof. The building shuddered, and she could hear the groan of metal under stress. The storm's getting worse, Marcus observed, moving to the window. The diner's built well, but if this keeps up... Another crack, louder this time, and the lights flickered weakly as the generator struggled to restart. We should move away from the windows, Adrian suggested. Find somewhere more sheltered to wait it out. Elena looked around the diner, her temporary sanctuary feeling suddenly fragile against the fury of the storm. Outside, the wind howled like something alive and hungry, and she could hear debris striking the building with increasing frequency. There's a storage room in the back, she said finally. No windows, reinforced walls. We'd be safer there. As they gathered what supplies they could carry, Elena couldn't shake the feeling that the storm was more than just a natural phenomenon. It felt almost like the world was trying to keep them together, forcing them into close quarters where they couldn't avoid the growing connection between them. And despite her protests and fears, Elena found herself hoping that maybe, just maybe, they were right about what she was. Because for the first time in her life, she didn't feel alone. She felt like she might finally be home. Chapter 4. Awakening Hearts. The storage room was cramped and filled with supplies, but it felt infinitely safer than the main dining area. Elena had managed to gather some blankets from the lost and found box, creating a makeshift shelter in the corner. The generator had finally given up completely, leaving them in darkness save for the pale glow of her phone's flashlight. The 3 brothers had arranged themselves around her in what seemed like an unconscious protective formation. Marcus sat directly across from her, his back against the wall, while Adrian and Damien flanked her sides. The small space forced them into close proximity, and Elena was hyper-aware of their presence. Every breath, every small movement, every accidental brush of skin against skin sent those strange electric jolts through her system. Tell me about your pack, Elena said, partly to distract herself from the growing tension, and partly because she genuinely wanted to understand their world. What's it like? Marcus's expression softened at the question. It's family, he said simply. Not just blood family, but chosen family. Everyone has a role, a purpose. The children are treasured and protected. The elderly are revered for their wisdom. Everyone belongs somewhere. Elena felt a pang of longing so sharp it took her breath away. That sounds wonderful. It is, Adrian agreed, shifting slightly so his shoulder brushed against hers. The contact sent warmth spiraling through her, and she had to resist the urge to lean into him. But it's not complete without our Luna. Without our mate to help lead and nurture the pack, what would happen to me? Elena asked quietly. If I really am what you think I am, what would my life be like? You'd be cherished, Damien said fiercely, his blue eyes burning with intensity even in the dim light. Protected, loved beyond measure. You'd help us lead, make decisions that affect the pack's well-being. Your word would carry as much weight as ours. Our people have been waiting for you, Marcus added. They need their Luna almost as desperately as we do. Without the complete pack bond, we're all just existing, not truly living. Elena pulled the blanket tighter around her shoulders. I don't know how to be a leader. I can barely manage my own life. You've been managing your own life since you were 8 years old, Adrian pointed out gently. You've survived things that would have broken most people. You have more strength than you realize. You took us in tonight without question, Damien added. You saw we were hurt and immediately began caring for us. That's Luna instinct, Elena. That's what our pack needs. Elena looked between the three of them, seeing the hope and desperation in their eyes. What if I'm not strong enough? What if I can't be what you need me to be? Then we'll face that together, Marcus said firmly. But I don't believe that's what will happen. From the moment you opened that door, you've been everything we've searched for. As if to emphasize his point, Marcus reached out and took her hand. The contact was like touching a live wire, sending shockwaves of sensation up her arm and straight to her heart. Elena gasped, but she didn't pull away. Instead, she found herself intertwining their fingers, marveling at how perfectly their hands fit together. I've never felt anything like this before, she whispered. Neither have we, Adrian said, his voice husky. This is what the mate bond feels like when it's beginning to form. The recognition between souls. Elena turned to look at him, and in the dim light, she could see gold flecks in his green eyes that definitely hadn't been there before. Your eyes, they change when we're emotional, Damien explained, moving closer so she could see the same phenomenon in his blue eyes, especially when we're near our mate. Elena's breath hitched as she realized she was surrounded by 3 incredibly powerful, incredibly attractive men who believed she was their destined partner. The rational part of her mind insisted this was all impossible, but her heart was singing a different tune entirely. I keep having these dreams, she found herself admitting, of running through forests, of hunting under the moonlight, of being part of something bigger than myself. Tell us about them, Marcus encouraged, his thumb tracing circles on the back of her hand. Elena closed her eyes, letting the memories wash over her. I'm always running, but not because I'm being chased. I'm running because it feels good, because I'm free, and I'm not alone. There are others with me, keeping pace. 3 others, usually. What do they look like? Damien asked, his voice carefully controlled. One is large and dark, with pale eyes that seem to see everything. Elena's gaze found Marcus, and she saw recognition flare in his expression. One is slightly smaller, but just as strong, with brown fur and eyes like emeralds. She looked at Adrian, who had gone very still. And one is the most playful, with lighter fur and eyes like sapphires. Damien made a sound like a growl, low and pleased. Those are our wolf forms. You've been dreaming of us. But how is that possible? Elena asked, though she was beginning to suspect she already knew the answer. Mates can sense each other across great distances, Adrian explained. In dreams, in moments of quiet contemplation. Our souls have been calling to each other for years. Elena pulled her hand free from Marcus's grip and buried her face in her palms. This is insane. 24 hours ago, I thought werewolves were just stories. Now you're telling me I've been psychically connected to 3 of them my entire life? Not your entire life, Marcus corrected gently. The dreams started around the time you turned 18, didn't they? When you aged out of the foster system? Elena lifted her head to stare at him. How could you possibly know that? Because that's when our dreams started too, Damien said softly. The night you turned 18, we all had the same vision. A girl with dark hair and starlight eyes, alone and afraid, but incredibly strong. We've been searching for you ever since. Elena felt tears prick her eyes. You've been looking for me for 6 years? We would have searched for 60 years if necessary. Adrian said fiercely. We would have searched until our dying breath. The emotion in his voice broke something loose in Elena's chest. These 3 men, these powerful, incredible beings, had spent years of their lives looking for her. Not some idealized version of her, not some fantasy, but her specifically. The broken, lonely waitress who lived in a trailer and had never felt like she belonged anywhere. I'm scared, she whispered. Of us? Marcus asked, and she could hear the pain in his voice at the thought. Of this, of what it means, of changing everything I thought I knew about myself and the world. Elena looked between them, seeing the understanding in their eyes. What if I'm not brave enough? You are, Damien said with absolute certainty. You let 3 strange wolves into your sanctuary in the middle of a blizzard. You're brave enough for anything. Outside, the storm continued to rage. But inside their small shelter, Elena felt a warmth that had nothing to do with the blankets surrounding them. These 3 men made her feel safe in a way she'd never experienced before. Protected. Cherished. Can I ask you something? She said suddenly. Anything. All 3 replied in unison, making her smile despite her nerves. If I am your mate, what happens next? I mean, practically speaking? The brothers exchanged one of their silent conversations, and Elena was beginning to recognize the look that passed between them when they were debating how much to tell her. There would be a claiming ceremony, Marcus said finally. A ritual that completes the mate bond and makes you officially our Luna. It's beautiful, Adrian added quickly, seeing her alarmed expression. Sacred. Nothing happens without your complete consent. And after that? Elena asked. After that, you come home with us, Damien said simply. You meet your pack. You help us rebuild what we've lost and create something even stronger. Elena was quiet for a long moment, processing everything they'd told her. The storm outside had calmed slightly, but she could still hear the wind whistling around the building. I need time, she said finally. This is all happening so fast. Yesterday I was just Elena Carter, waitress. Now you're asking me to become Elena Carter, Werewolf Luna. Elena Blackwood. Marcus corrected softly. If you choose us, you'd be Elena Blackwood. The name sent a shiver through her that had nothing to do with the cold. Elena Blackwood. Luna of the Blackwood Pack. Mate to 3 alpha brothers. It should have terrified her. Instead, it felt like coming home. We have time, Adrian said gently. The storm isn't going anywhere. And neither are we. Take all the time you need to process this. Elena nodded, settling back against the wall. But as she closed her eyes, trying to sort through the chaos in her mind, she became aware of something else. The space between them seemed to thrum with energy, and she could swear she could feel their emotions as clearly as her own. Marcus's protective determination, Adrian's gentle patience, Damien's fierce devotion. The mate bond was already forming, whether she was ready for it or not. And despite her fears, Elena found herself hoping it would continue to grow. Chapter 5. Shattered Truths. Elena had dozed fitfully against Adrian's shoulder when the sound of engines cut through the dying storm. Her eyes snapped open, and she felt all 3 brothers tense around her. Marcus was already moving toward the small window high on the storage room wall, his expression grim. What is it? Elena whispered, though the dread pooling in her stomach told her she already knew this wasn't good news. Vehicles. Multiple SUVs, Marcus reported, his voice tight with concern. They're surrounding the diner. Damien growled low in his throat. How did they find us in this weather? GPS trackers, Adrian said grimly. They must have planted them on us before we left the territory. Elena scrambled to her feet, her heart racing. Who's out there? Before any of them could answer, a powerful voice boomed from outside, amplified by some kind of speaker system. Marcus, Adrian, Damien Blackwood. By order of the Werewolf Council, you will surrender yourselves immediately. You have violated pack law by remaining unmated past the acceptable time frame. Elena's blood ran cold. The council? But you said you had 3 days. We do, Marcus said, his jaw clenched. This is Councilman Hayes. He's been trying to dissolve our pack for years, waiting for any excuse. The voice outside continued, cold and authoritative. You have 60 seconds to exit the building with your hands visible. Any resistance will be met with appropriate force. Elena watched in horror as the three brothers exchanged grim looks. She could see them preparing for a fight they couldn't possibly win, and something fierce and protective rose up in her chest. There has to be another way, she said desperately. Can't you tell them about me? About us? They won't believe us without proof, Adrian said softly. And even if they did, an unclaimed mate isn't enough. The bond has to be complete. Then complete it, Elena said without thinking. Right now. Do whatever ceremony you need to do. Damien shook his head. It doesn't work that way, sweetheart. The claiming ceremony takes hours, and it requires a full moon. We don't have either. The sound of boots crunching through snow grew closer, and Elena could hear men shouting orders to surround the building. Her mind raced, trying to find a solution, but every option seemed to lead to the same devastating conclusion. The Blackwood brothers would be taken away, their pact dissolved, and she would lose the only people who had ever made her feel like she belonged. 30 seconds! Hayes's voice boomed again. Elena closed her eyes and reached deep inside herself, searching for that wild, untamed part of her soul that she'd always kept locked away. If she really was what they thought she was, if she really did have werewolf blood running through her veins, then maybe she could help them somehow. Elena, what are you doing? Marcus asked, alarm in his voice as she began to glow with a soft, silver light. I don't know, she admitted, feeling power coursing through her like electricity. But I can't let them take you away. The door to the diner exploded inward, and armed men in tactical gear poured through the entrance. Elena heard them shouting commands, moving through the main dining area toward the back where the storage room was located. Time's up, Blackwoods, Hayes called out. Come out now, or we come in after you. Marcus stepped protectively in front of Elena, his body already beginning to shift. If we're going down, we're taking some of them with us. No, Elena said firmly, placing her hand on his arm. The silver light around her intensified, and she felt something ancient and powerful awakening in her blood. There's another way. Before any of them could stop her, Elena pushed past them and walked out of the storage room. The tactical team immediately trained their weapons on her, red laser sights dancing across her chest. Hold your fire, a commanding voice barked. A tall man in an expensive suit stepped through the broken doorway, flanked by more armed men. His cold gray eyes fixed on Elena with predatory interest. Well, what do we have here? Elena lifted her chin, meeting his gaze directly. My name is Elena Carter. I'm the Blackwood brothers' mate. Hayes laughed, a sound devoid of warmth. Is that so? And I suppose you have proof of this claim? I don't need proof, Elena said, surprised by the strength in her own voice. I know what I am. What you are, Hayes said, circling her like a predator sizing up its prey, is a human who's gotten caught up in something she doesn't understand. The Blackwood brothers are desperate, girl. They'll say anything to avoid losing their pack status. Elena felt Marcus, Adrian, and Damien emerge from the storage room behind her. But she didn't turn around. She kept her eyes fixed on Hayes, feeling that wild power building inside her like a storm about to break. You're wrong, she said quietly. I'm not human. Hayes stopped circling and studied her more carefully. Even if that were true, which I doubt, you're not claimed. An unmated female has no standing in pack law. Then maybe it's time the laws changed, Elena said. And as the words left her mouth, she felt something snap into place inside her. The silver light around her flared brighter, and every person in the room took an involuntary step back. Elena, Marcus said urgently from behind her. You need to be careful. Your power is spiking. Elena could feel it too, like liquid lightning in her veins, but she also felt something else. The presence of someone new entering the diner, someone whose energy felt ancient and wise, and infinitely patient. An elderly woman with silver hair and knowing eyes walked through the broken doorway, seemingly unbothered by the armed men surrounding her. She wore a simple brown coat, but there was an aura of power around her that made even Hayes's guards shift nervously. Vera Morgan, Hayes said, his voice tight with displeasure. I should have known you'd interfere. Councilman Hayes, The woman replied pleasantly, inclining her head slightly. How lovely to see you again. Though I must say, your timing is rather poor. Elena felt drawn to this woman, as if she represented safety and answers to questions she hadn't known how to ask. Who are you? Vera's eyes twinkled as she looked at Elena. I'm someone who's been waiting a very long time to meet you, child. Though I suspect you've been having dreams about me too. Elena's breath caught. Now that she mentioned it, there had been dreams of an elderly woman with silver hair, always just at the edge of her consciousness. You're a witch, among other things, Vera confirmed. But more importantly, I'm here to tell Councilman Hayes something very interesting about you, dear. Hayes stepped forward aggressively. Whatever game you're playing, Morgan, it won't work. The Blackwood brothers have failed to find their mate within the prescribed time frame. Their pack status is forfeit. Is it? Vera asked mildly. She walked over to Elena and placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. The touch sent a wave of calm through Elena's agitated system, but it also did something else. It amplified the power flowing through her, until she was practically radiating silver light. Every person in the room stared in stunned silence as Elena's human appearance began to shimmer and change. Her dark hair took on silver highlights that seemed to move like liquid moonlight. Her brown eyes lightened to an ethereal silver that seemed to hold the wisdom of ages. Most dramatically, a crescent moon shape appeared on her forehead, glowing with the same silver light that surrounded her. Blessed moon. Hayes whispered, his face going pale. She's moon-blessed. Indeed she is, Vera said with satisfaction. Elena Carter is the last known descendant of the moon-blessed bloodline. Her parents, Sarah and Michael Carter, died protecting the secret of her heritage. They knew the council would try to use her as a weapon if they discovered what she was. Elena felt the truth of those words resonate in her bones. Her parents hadn't died in a car accident. They'd been murdered, killed to prevent the council from getting their hands on their daughter. You killed them, she said, her voice deadly quiet as she stared at Hayes. You killed my parents. Hayes held up his hands placatingly. That was a long time ago, and it was necessary for the greater good. Your bloodline is too powerful to be left unchecked. Elena felt rage building inside her, hot and fierce and completely justified. The silver light around her began to pulse with her heartbeat, and she could feel Marcus, Adrian, and Damien moving closer to her, their own protective instincts flaring in response to her distress. Elena, Marcus said quietly. Breathe. Don't let the anger control you. But Elena was beyond listening. The truth about her parents' death, combined with the threat to the men she was beginning to love, had pushed her past her breaking point. Power coursed through her like a river breaking through a dam, and she could feel something fundamental changing inside her. You want to see what moon-blessed power looks like? She asked Hayes, her voice echoing with otherworldly authority. Let me show you. Elena threw back her head and let out a sound that was part scream, part howl, and completely inhuman. Every window in the diner shattered simultaneously, and the silver light around her exploded outward like a supernova. When the light faded, Elena stood transformed. She was still recognizably herself, but now she radiated power that made even the Alpha brothers look tame by comparison. Her eyes blazed with silver fire, and the crescent moon on her forehead pulsed with each beat of her heart. The moon-blessed has awakened, Vera said with deep satisfaction, and she's chosen her mates. I'd say that makes this whole situation rather moot. Wouldn't you agree, Councilman? Hayes stared at Elena with a mixture of fear and greed that made her skin crawl. She's too dangerous to be left free. The council will need to take her into protective custody. Like hell, Damien snarled, moving to stand beside Elena. Marcus and Adrian flanked her other side, their bodies already beginning to shift as they prepared to defend their mate. Elena looked at the three brothers, seeing the love and devotion in their eyes, and felt something click into place. The mate bond that had been building slowly suddenly snapped into full existence, connecting all four of them with threads of silver light. I choose them, she said clearly, her voice carrying to every corner of the room. I claim Marcus, Adrian, and Damien Blackwood as my mates. Anyone who tries to separate us will face the full power of the moon-blessed bloodline. The threat hung in the air like a physical thing, and Elena saw several of Hayes's men take nervous steps backward. But Hayes himself stepped forward, his eyes gleaming with dangerous ambition. "Perfect," he said with a cold smile. "The council thanks you for making our job easier. Guards, take them all." Chapter 6. Awakening. The moment Hayes gave the order, chaos erupted in the diner. His guards raised their weapons, but Marcus, Adrian, and Damien were already shifting, their human forms dissolving into massive wolves in the span of heartbeats. Elena felt their transformation like a physical pull in her chest, the mate bond singing with shared power and purpose. But before the first shot could be fired, Elena stepped forward and raised her hand. The silver light radiating from her skin pulsed once, twice, and then exploded outward in a wave of pure lunar energy. Every weapon in the room turned to ash in the guard's hands, the metal simply disintegrating under the force of her power. "I said anyone who tries to separate us will face my power," Elena said, her voice carrying an otherworldly authority that made even Hayes stumble backward. "Did you think I was making an idle threat?" The three wolf brothers flanked her, their massive forms bristling with protective fury. Elena could feel their emotions through the bond. Marcus's tactical assessment of threats, Adrian's concern for her well-being, Damien's barely restrained violence. It was overwhelming and comforting at the same time. Hayes recovered quickly, his politician's smile sliding back into place. "Impressive display, Miss Carter. But you're still outnumbered, and you're still untrained. The council has resources you can't imagine, and I have power you can't comprehend," Elena replied. She looked around the room at the dozen armed men, feeling their fear like a tangible thing. "Your guards are terrified of me. Can you smell it on them, councilman? The stench of their terror?" Indeed, several of the tactical team members were shifting nervously, their eyes darting between Elena's silver-blazing form and the exits. The wolves they'd been sent to capture were one thing, but facing down a moon, blessed Luna was entirely different. Vera Morgan stepped forward, her elderly frame somehow commanding despite being surrounded by armed men. "Councilman Hayes, I think it's time you reconsidered your position. The moon-blessed bloodline hasn't awakened in over 2 centuries. When it does, it means change is coming to our world. Change that the council will control." Hayes snapped. "She's too dangerous to roam free. She needs proper guidance, proper training. She needs her mates," Vera corrected firmly. "The moon-blessed power is unstable without the grounding influence of a complete mate bond. Try to separate her from the Blackwood brothers, and you risk unleashing something that could destroy every werewolf pack on the continent." Elena felt the truth of those words in her bones. The power coursing through her was intoxicating, but volatile, like holding lightning in her bare hands. She could feel it wanting to lash out, to protect and destroy in equal measure. Only the steady presence of Marcus, Adrian, and Damien kept her anchored. "You're bluffing," Hayes said. But Elena could hear the uncertainty in his voice. "Am I?" Elena asked quietly. She let a small fraction of her power loose, just enough to make the floor beneath their feet tremble and crack. "My parents died to keep me away from people like you. People who would use me as a weapon instead of letting me choose my own path." Hayes's mask finally slipped, revealing the calculating predator beneath. "Your parents were fools. They had a chance to serve the greater good, to help bring order to our chaotic world. Instead, they chose to hide, to waste your potential." Elena felt rage building in her chest like molten metal, and the silver light around her flared brighter. "They chose to protect me. They chose love over power. And look where it got them," Hayes sneered. "Dead in a ditch, leaving their daughter to grow up alone and ignorant of her heritage." The words hit Elena like physical blows, but they also crystallized something inside her. Her parents had sacrificed everything to give her a choice. They died so she could decide her own fate instead of having it dictated by the council's ambitions. "You're right," she said, her voice deadly calm. "They did die, but they also succeeded. I grew up free. I learned to be strong on my own terms. And now, I'm choosing my own path." Elena reached out through the mate bond, feeling for the connection with Marcus, Adrian, and Damien. What she found there made her gasp. Their bond wasn't just forming. It was exploding into existence, with the force of a star being born. She could feel their love, their devotion, their willingness to die for her without hesitation. "I choose them," she said again, but this time the words carried the weight of absolute certainty. "I choose love over power, family over control, and freedom over fear." The mate bond snapped into full completion with a sound like thunder. Silver light engulfed all four of them, and Elena felt the brothers' wolf forms dissolving back into their human shapes as the energy wrapped around them like a cocoon. When the light faded, they stood transformed. Elena's moon-blessed marks were now permanent, the crescent moon on her forehead gleaming like polished silver. Marcus, Adrian, and Damien bore matching marks on their necks, intricate designs that proclaimed them as the chosen mates of the moon-blessed Luna. But more than their physical appearance had changed. Elena could feel their thoughts, their emotions, their very souls intertwined with hers. The loneliness that had plagued her entire life was gone, replaced by a completeness so profound it brought tears to her eyes. "The bond is complete," Vera announced, her voice filled with wonder. "For the first time in over 200 years, a moon-blessed Luna has claimed her mates." Hayes stared at them in shock, his face cycling through a range of emotions from fury to greed to something that might have been fear. "This changes nothing," he said finally. "The Council still has authority over all werewolf packs. You will submit to our guidance." Elena laughed, and the sound carried power that made the remaining windows in nearby buildings crack. "You still don't understand, do you? I'm not just any Luna. I'm the Moon Blessed. My authority supersedes yours." She gestured, and every person in the room felt the weight of her power pressing down on them. The guards dropped to one knee involuntarily, their bodies responding to an alpha command more powerful than anything they'd ever experienced. "The Council rules by consent of the packs," Elena continued, her voice carrying to every corner of the diner. "But the Moon Blessed rules by divine right. The Moon Goddess herself has awakened this power in me." Hayes remained standing through sheer force of will, but Elena could see the strain it was costing him. "You can't seriously believe you can challenge centuries of established order." "I can, and I will," Elena said simply. "The old ways aren't working. Too much politics, too much corruption, too much emphasis on control instead of protection. It's time for something new." Marcus stepped forward, his new mate mark gleaming on his neck. "The Blackwood Pack stands with our Luna. We reject the Council's authority and claim sovereignty under moon-blessed law." "As do we," came a voice from outside. Elena turned to see other figures emerging from the storm. Werewolves from neighboring packs, drawn by the surge of moon-blessed power. "The Riverside Pack stands with the moon-blessed Luna. The Mountain Peak Pack stands with the Luna," came another voice. More and more pack representatives arrived, until the area around the diner was filled with werewolves from across the region. They all knelt as one when Elena emerged from the building, their heads bowed in respect and recognition. Hayes looked around at the growing crowd, his face pale with rage and disbelief. "You can't all be serious. You're throwing away centuries of stability for the word of one untrained girl." "Not untrained anymore," Vera said with satisfaction. "The mate bond has awakened her full potential. She is everything the prophecies said she would be." Elena felt the truth of those words settling into her bones. The power that had been chaotic and overwhelming just minutes before now felt natural, like breathing. She could sense every werewolf present, could feel their emotions, their loyalty, their hope for a better future. "Councilman Hayes," she said, her voice carrying easily across the crowd, "you have two choices. You can accept the new order and work with us to build something better, or you can maintain your opposition and be removed from power entirely." Hayes looked around at the sea of kneeling werewolves, at his own guards who were still compelled to kneel before Elena's authority, at the three alpha brothers whose eyes promised death if he made the wrong choice. "This isn't over," he said finally, his voice tight with barely controlled fury. "The full council will hear about this. There will be consequences." "There will indeed," Elena agreed, "but not the ones you're expecting." She gestured, and Hayes found himself being gently but inexorably pushed toward one of the few remaining SUVs. His guards followed, their weapons useless, their authority broken. "Leave," Elena commanded, and her voice carried the weight of absolute law. "And tell the council that the moon-blessed Luna has risen. Tell them that change is coming whether they embrace it or not." As Hayes and his men drove away into the dying storm, Elena felt a profound sense of completion settle over her. She was no longer the lonely orphan working in a mountain diner. She was Elena Blackwood, moon-blessed Luna, mate to 3 alpha brothers, and leader of a new age for werewolf kind. Marcus, Adrian, and Damien moved to stand beside her, their hands finding hers as they faced their new reality together. "What happens now?" Adrian asked quietly. Elena looked out at the assembled packs, at Vera's proud smile, at the dawn beginning to break through the storm clouds. "Now we build something better," she said simply. Together, the mate bond hummed with shared purpose and love, and Elena knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them as one. The lonely girl was gone forever, replaced by a Luna who would never have to stand alone again. "Welcome to your new life, Elena Blackwood," Vera said softly. Elena smiled, feeling truly complete for the first time in her life. "Thank you, all of you, for helping me find my way home." Chapter 7. Under the Moon. The assembled werewolves from various packs remained kneeling in the snow as Elena stood with her mates. But she could feel their anticipation. They were waiting for her to formally claim her position, to complete the transformation from lost orphan to recognized Luna. The mate bond with Marcus, Adrian, and Damien pulsed with warmth and strength, but Elena knew there was still one final step to take. "Rise," she commanded gently, and every werewolf present got to their feet in perfect synchronization. The display of unity and respect was overwhelming. Vera Morgan approached, carrying an ornate silver box that seemed to glow with its own inner light. "Luna Elena, there is one final ceremony that must be performed, the formal claiming ritual that will bind you permanently to your mates and establish your authority over all werewolf packs." Elena looked at the box with curiosity and just a touch of nervousness. "What does it involve?" "Nothing that will harm you, child," Vera assured her with a warm smile. "But it must be done under the open sky, witnessed by representatives of the packs you will lead." Marcus stepped closer, his hand warm on her lower back. "Are you ready for this? Once the claiming is complete, there's no going back. You'll be bound to us and to our world forever." Elena looked into his pale eyes, seeing love and devotion that took her breath away. Then she turned to Adrian and Damien, finding the same emotions reflected in their gazes. The mate bond thrummed between them, carrying whispers of forever and promises of protection. "I've never been more ready for anything in my life," she said with absolute certainty. The crowd of werewolves moved back, forming a large circle in the snow-covered parking lot. At the center, Vera began arranging items from the silver box: candles that burned with silver flames, crystals that captured and reflected moonlight despite the dawn sky, and 3 matching silver torques that gleamed with ancient power. "The claiming ceremony is as old as our kind," Vera explained as she worked. "It binds mates not just to each other, but to the very essence of what we are. Luna Elena, as the moon blessed, your claiming will resonate through every pack on the continent." Elena nodded, feeling the weight of responsibility settling on her shoulders. But instead of feeling crushed by it, she felt empowered. This was what she'd been born for, what her parents had died protecting, what her entire life had been leading toward. "What do I need to do?" she asked. "Stand in the center with your mates," Vera instructed. "The ritual will guide itself once it begins. Trust your instincts, trust the bond between you, and trust the power of the moon goddess." Elena took her place in the center of the circle, with Marcus, Adrian, and Damien forming a triangle around her. The moment they were in position, the silver flames on the candles flared higher, and Elena felt power begin to build in the air around them. "By the light of the moon and the strength of the pack," Vera began, her voice carrying clearly across the silent crowd, "we witnessed the claiming of Elena Carter by the Alpha brothers of the Blackwood pack." The power in the air intensified, and Elena felt the mate bond expanding, deepening, becoming something that existed on a level beyond the physical. She could feel Marcus's steady strength, Adrian's gentle wisdom, and Damien's fierce protectiveness flowing through her like warm honey. "Marcus Blackwood," Vera called out. "Do you claim Elena Carter as your mate, your Luna, your other half for all eternity?" Marcus stepped forward, his eyes blazing with emotion. "I claim Elena Carter as my mate, my Luna, the missing piece of my soul. I pledge my strength to protect her, my wisdom to guide her, and my love to cherish her for all the days of my life." As he spoke, one of the silver torques rose from its place among the crystals and settled around Elena's neck. The metal was warm against her skin, and she felt Marcus's essence binding to hers in a way that was deeper than marriage, deeper than any human concept of love. "Adrian Blackwood," Vera continued, "do you claim Elena Carter as your mate, your Luna, your other half, for all eternity?" Adrian's voice was husky with emotion as he replied, "I claim Elena Carter as my mate, my Luna, the peace that settles my restless spirit. I pledge my loyalty to stand beside her, my compassion to support her, and my devotion to honor her for all eternity." The second torque joined the first, and Elena gasped as Adrian's gentle nature merged with her own. She could feel his thoughts, his memories, his dreams for their future together. "Damien Blackwood," Vera called, "do you claim Elena Carter as your mate, your Luna, your other half for all eternity?" Damien's blue eyes blazed with silver fire as he spoke. "I claim Elena Carter as my mate, my Luna, the light that drives away my darkness. I pledge my passion to ignite her spirit, my courage to defend her, and my heart to love her beyond the boundaries of life itself." The third torque settled around Elena's neck, and the combined weight of all three bonds nearly brought her to her knees. She was connected to Marcus, Adrian, and Damien in ways she'd never imagined possible. Their thoughts, emotions, and very souls were intertwined with hers in an eternal dance of love and devotion. "Elena Carter," Vera said, her voice soft but carrying clearly in the still air. "Do you claim Marcus, Adrian, and Damien Blackwood as your mates, your alphas, your other halves for all eternity?" Elena looked at each of her mates in turn, seeing her whole future reflected in their eyes. "I claim Marcus, Adrian, and Damien Blackwood as my mates, my alphas, the completion of everything I am. I pledge my power to strengthen them, my love to heal them, and my soul to bind with theirs until the stars fall from the sky." The moment the words left her lips, the world exploded in silver light. Elena felt herself lifted off the ground, as power beyond comprehension flowed through her. The mate bond, already strong, became something transcendent. She wasn't just connected to her three mates. She was part of them, and they were part of her. When the light faded and her feet touched the ground again, Elena knew she had been fundamentally changed. The crescent moon mark on her forehead now blazed with permanent silver fire, and matching marks had appeared on the necks of all three brothers. But more than that, she could feel every werewolf present, could sense their pack bonds, their loyalty, their hope for the future. "The claiming is complete," Vera announced, her voice filled with joy and reverence. "I present to you Luna Elena Blackwood and her alpha mates, Marcus, Adrian, and Damien Blackwood. May their bond be eternal, and their reign be just." The assembled werewolves erupted in howls of celebration, a primal sound that spoke of acceptance, joy, and hope. Elena felt tears streaming down her cheeks as the reality of what had just happened settled over her. She was no longer alone. She would never be alone again. Marcus pulled her into his arms, his lips finding hers in a kiss that tasted of forever and promises kept. When they broke apart, Adrian and Damien were there, their own kisses sealing the bond that now connected all four of them. "How do you feel?" Adrian asked softly, his hand cupping her cheek. "Complete," Elena whispered, marveling at the truth of it. "For the first time in my life, I feel complete." "What happens now?" asked one of the pack representatives, stepping forward respectfully. "The council will retaliate. They won't accept the loss of their authority without a fight." Elena looked around at the assembled werewolves, feeling their strength and determination through the bonds that now connected her to every pack present. "Let them come," she said, her voice carrying new authority. "We'll be ready. Marcus's arm tightened around her waist. The old system was broken. Too much corruption, too much focus on control instead of protection. It's time for something better. What did you have in mind? Vera asked with interest. Elena closed her eyes and reached out through her new connections, feeling the needs and hopes of every werewolf present. A federation instead of a dictatorship. Packs governing themselves but united in purpose. Protection instead of oppression. Choice instead of compulsion. It won't be easy, Adrian warned. Change never is, especially when it threatens entrenched power. Nothing worthwhile ever is, Damien added with a fierce grin. But we have something the council doesn't. What's that? Elena asked. Each other, he said simply. And the power of the moon blessed backing us up. Elena felt the truth of his words resonate through the mate bond. Together, they could face anything. The council, other challenges, whatever the future might bring. They were stronger united than any of them could be alone. There's something else, Vera said, approaching with a small leather-bound book. Your parents left this for you, along with instructions that it should only be given to you after your claiming ceremony. Elena took the book with trembling hands. It was her mother's journal, filled with everything her parents had wanted her to know about her heritage, her power, and the destiny they'd seen in her future. They knew, she whispered, flipping through pages of elegant handwriting. They knew this would happen. The moon-blessed power comes with the gift of foresight, Vera explained. Your mother saw your future, saw your mates, saw the change you would bring to our world. Everything they did was to ensure you would have the chance to choose your own path. Elena clutched the journal to her chest, feeling her parents' love reaching across the years to comfort her. They had given her the greatest gift possible. The freedom to choose love over duty, family over politics, hope over fear. Thank you, she said to Vera, then turned to address the assembled werewolves. Thank you all for witnessing this ceremony, for accepting me as your Luna. I promise you that I will be worthy of your trust. The crowd began to disperse, pack representatives heading back to their territories to spread word of what had transpired. But many remained, pledging their immediate support and asking how they could help build the new world Elena had envisioned. As the sun fully rose over the mountain town, Elena stood surrounded by her mates and her new extended family, feeling hope bloom in her chest like a flower reaching toward the light. The claiming ceremony was complete. The bonds were sealed, and the future stretched out before them bright with possibility. Ready to go home, Luna? Marcus asked, his eyes warm with love and pride. Elena looked around at the diner where her old life had ended and her new one had begun, then at the faces of the werewolves who had accepted her as their leader. I'm already home, she said softly. Wherever you three are, that's home. The mate bond hummed with shared contentment as they prepared to leave for Blackwood territory, ready to begin their life together as a true family at last. Chapter 8. Family. 6 months later, Elena stood on the wraparound porch of the magnificent log home that had been built where Murphy's Diner once stood. The old building had been carefully dismantled and rebuilt into a beautiful structure that served as both the Blackwood family residence and the administrative center for their growing federation of packs. The morning sun streamed through the pine trees, casting dappled shadows across the expansive grounds where pack members worked and children played. Elena's hand rested on her rounded belly, feeling the gentle movements of the 3 lives growing within her. Triplets, just as she'd somehow known they would be. 1 child for each of her mates, though she loved them all equally. Good morning, beautiful. Marcus's deep voice came from behind her as strong arms wrapped around her waist, his hands covering hers on her belly. How are my pups doing today? Elena leaned back against his solid chest, savoring the warmth and security of his embrace. Active. I think they're going to be a handful. With parents like us? Absolutely, Adrian said with a laugh as he joined them on the porch, carrying a steaming mug of her favorite herbal tea. But we wouldn't have it any other way. Damien emerged from the house moments later, his hair still damp from his morning shower. The kids are definitely going to keep us on our toes, he agreed, pressing a gentle kiss to Elena's temple, just like their mother does. Elena smiled, feeling the familiar warmth of contentment that filled her whenever her 3 mates were close. The bond between them had only grown stronger over the past 6 months. deepening into something that went beyond love, into the realm of souls perfectly aligned. "Any word from the Southern California Pax?" she asked, settling into the comfortable chair that Marcus had positioned for her. "They've officially voted to join the Federation," Adrian reported, settling beside her with his own cup of coffee. "That makes 43 Pax now. The Council's influence is dwindling rapidly." Elena nodded with satisfaction. The new Federation she'd envisioned was becoming reality faster than anyone had anticipated. Pack after pack was choosing freedom and self-governance over the Council's authoritarian rule. It wasn't always smooth. Change never was. But it was working. "What about Hayes?" she asked, though she wasn't particularly worried about the former councilman's threats anymore. "Still making noise, but fewer and fewer packs are listening," Damien said with a dismissive shrug. "Hard to maintain authority when your power base keeps eroding." A commotion from the direction of the training grounds caught their attention. Elena smiled as she watched a group of young werewolves practicing their shifting techniques under the guidance of pack elders. Among them were several teenage girls who had come specifically to train with the legendary moon-blessed Luna. "Your admirers are getting better," Marcus observed with pride. "Jessica managed a full shift in under 30 seconds yesterday." Elena felt a warm glow of maternal pride. Training the next generation of female leaders had become one of her favorite aspects of her new role. For too long, the werewolf world had been dominated by male hierarchy. She was determined to change that, to show young she-wolves that they could be just as strong, just as capable as their male counterparts. "Luna Elena," a young voice called out. Elena looked up to see Tommy Richardson, the 8-year-old son of the Riverside Pax Beta, running toward them with the boundless energy that only children possessed. "Good morning, Tommy," Elena said warmly, as the boy skidded to a stop in front of the porch. "What brings you here so early?" "Mama sent me to tell you the new clinic is ready for the opening ceremony," Tommy announced proudly. "And Doc Martinez says the medical supplies arrived from the city." Elena's smile widened. The medical clinic was another project close to her heart. A facility that would serve not just werewolves, but the entire human population of the mountain town. Integration between the supernatural and human communities was slowly but steadily improving. "Tell your mother we'll be there in an hour," Elena said. "And Tommy? Thank you for being such a good messenger." The boy beamed and scampered off, probably to spread the news to anyone who would listen. Elena watched him go with fondness, imagining her own children running through these same grounds in a few years. "Speaking of the clinic," Adrian said, pulling out his phone, "Dr. Martinez wants to schedule your next prenatal appointment. She's concerned about the unique nature of your pregnancy." Elena rolled her eyes good-naturedly. "I'm fine, and so are the babies. Moon-blessed mothers have been carrying werewolf children for centuries. Humor us," Marcus said, his voice carrying just a hint of the alpha authority that still made her pulse quicken. "You're carrying the future of our pack. We want to make sure everything goes perfectly." "Everything will go perfectly," Elena assured him, though she made a mental note to schedule the appointment. Her mate's protective instincts had only intensified since her pregnancy became apparent, and she'd learned to pick her battles. Vera Morgan appeared at the edge of the clearing, walking with the same purposeful stride she'd had 6 months ago despite her advanced age. Elena had asked the wise woman to stay on as an advisor, and Vera had accepted with evident pleasure. "Good morning, dear ones," Vera said as she climbed the porch steps. "I bring news from the Eastern Pax." "Good news, I hope?" Elena asked, though Vera's expression suggested it was. "The best," Vera confirmed with a pleased smile. "The New England Pack Alliance has voted unanimously to join the Federation. They're also requesting permission to establish a training exchange program with our young leaders." Elena felt a surge of satisfaction. The New England Packs had been among the most traditional, most resistant to change. If they were embracing the new system, it meant the transformation was truly taking hold. "Approved," she said without hesitation. "The more our young people learn from different pack cultures, the stronger we'll all become." "There's more," Vera continued. "They've also formally requested that you preside over their alpha succession ceremony next month. Young Robert Clearwater is finally ready to take over from his father." Elena exchanged glances with her mates. Travel during pregnancy wasn't ideal, but the symbolic importance of the moon-blessed Luna officiating at such ceremonies couldn't be overstated. We'll make it work, Marcus said, reading her thoughts through their bond. Short trip, minimal stress, plenty of security. And if the babies decide to make an appearance early, we'll have the best medical team on the continent standing by, Adrian added practically. Elena laughed, feeling the babies kick in response to her amusement. You three are going to be the most overprotective fathers in werewolf history. Probably. Damien agreed without shame. Our children deserve nothing less than our absolute dedication. A comfortable silence settled over them as they watched their pack members go about their morning routines. Elena marveled at how natural it all felt now, how seamlessly she'd transitioned from lonely diner waitress to Luna of the most influential werewolf federation in North America. Do you ever miss it? Adrian asked quietly, as if reading her thoughts. Your old life, I mean. The simplicity of it. Elena considered the question seriously. Sometimes I miss the quiet, she admitted, but I don't miss the loneliness. I don't miss feeling like I didn't belong anywhere. She looked around at the bustling community that had become her world, at the three men who had become her heart, at the growing evidence of the positive change they were creating together. This is where I belong, she said with absolute certainty. This is who I was meant to be. Marcus squeezed her hand gently. Any regrets about letting 3 frozen wolves into your diner that night? Elena laughed, remembering that terrifying, wonderful moment when everything changed. Best decision I ever made, she said, echoing Damien's words from months ago. Though I have to admit, when I saw you 3 transform, I thought I was losing my mind. You were finding it, Vera corrected with a knowing smile. You were finally becoming who you were always meant to be. Elena nodded, feeling the truth of those words in her bones. The frightened, lonely girl who had worked those night shifts was gone, replaced by a confident woman who knew her place in the world and her purpose in life. What do you think the children will be like? She asked, voicing a question that had been on her mind more and more lately. Strong, Marcus said immediately. With the combined bloodlines of the Blackwood Alphas and the moon-blessed Luna, they'll be forces of nature. Compassionate, Adrian added. They'll have your heart, your instinct to care for others. Fierce, Damien concluded with a grin. They'll protect what they love with everything they have. Elena smiled, imagining their children embodying all of those qualities and more. They'll be perfect, she said softly. And they'll never have to wonder where they belong, or whether they're loved. Never, all 3 of her mates said in unison, their voices carrying the weight of an eternal promise. As the morning progressed and their responsibilities called them to various tasks around the territory, Elena remained on the porch for a few more minutes, savoring the peace and contentment that filled her life. The storm that had brought her mates to her door had long since passed, but the changes it had wrought continued to ripple outward. The werewolf world was transforming, becoming something better, more inclusive, more hopeful, and at the center of it all was the family she'd found in the most unexpected place. Marcus with his steady strength, Adrian with his gentle wisdom, Damien with his fierce devotion, and soon 3 children who would carry their legacy into the future. Elena placed both hands on her belly, feeling the strong, healthy movements of her babies. We did it, she whispered to them. We built something beautiful together. The mate bond hummed with love and contentment as her 3 mates went about their duties, always connected to her no matter how far apart they might be physically. This was what happiness felt like, Elena realized. Not the temporary pleasure of a good day or a pleasant moment, but the deep, abiding joy of knowing you were exactly where you belonged. As she finally rose to join the clinic opening ceremony, Elena caught her reflection in the window and smiled. The frightened girl was truly gone, replaced by a woman who had found her strength, her purpose, and her forever family. Sometimes the best things really did come to those who opened their hearts and their doors to love. Ready for the next adventure, my loves? She asked through the mate bond. The answering chorus of always from Marcus, Adrian, and Damien filled her heart with warmth as she stepped off the porch to join her extraordinary life. The moon-blessed Luna had found her happily ever after, and it was more beautiful than any dream she could have imagined. Elena's transformation from lonely waitress to moon-blessed Luna proves that sometimes our greatest destiny begins with a single act of kindness. But her story is just one thread in a vast tapestry of supernatural romance. Throughout werewolf territories worldwide, other broken souls are discovering their mates, awakening hidden powers, and fighting for love against impossible odds. These untold stories of passion and transformation remain in the shadows, waiting for someone to bring them to light. Every time you choose not to subscribe, another epic love story goes unshared. Another heart searching for its mate remains silent. You witnessed Elena find her forever family. Shouldn't others have that same chance to discover hope? True pack members never leave their own behind. If this tale of 3 alpha brothers and their destined Luna moved your soul, let us know in the comments. Your voice matters to our growing family. We're deeply grateful you spent your evening with Elena, Marcus, Adrian, and Damien. Their love story was crafted especially for listeners like you, who crave deep emotional connections and supernatural romance. Ready for your next obsession? Our library overflows with alpha mates, rejected bonds, and powerful heroines claiming their destiny. Hit subscribe and activate notifications so you never miss when we unveil another heart-stopping werewolf romance. Welcome to the pack.